My name is Kelsey Wolfis, and I'll be talking a little bit about the different kinds of assessments. So, first we have the criterion reference tests. These tests are designed to measure students' performances against a fixed set of predetermined learning standards. If a student is above the established scores, then the student is deemed proficient, if not they're below. These tests can be high stakes. They can be used to make decisions about educators, schools, or even districts. It's just kind of against that like baseline what the student should know by now, so what they're testing on. Um, Next, we have the formative assessment. This is used by faculty to help pinpoint what students are struggling with and immediately address those problems. It can also be used to help show the strengths and weaknesses of students to see what problems need work. So if a student is struggling in a certain subject, it can really just point out what needs work, what they don't understand, what the teacher needs to kind of address more in their lessons or individual help, stuff like that. So some examples would be like writing key points of a lecture, drawing a concept map, just making sure they really understand what they were learning and what they had to understand. Next, we have the summative assessment, which is assessing each student at the end of each unit by comparing them to a standard or a benchmark. These tests are usually high stakes with a high point system. So they're usually taken at the end of a of a lesson, like a midterm exam, a final project, or a final paper. So just to see what that student learned over the course of however long that semester or trimester would be. Next, we have triangulation. It's an assessment used by teachers that uses multiple different methods of assessment, such as learning conversations, observations, tests, activities, stuff like that. It really gives students and teachers a more complex picture of what needs to be done, what actions need to be taken. Some reasons to use triangulation versus other methods would be you get more accurate results. If you have more tests, you're going to get more information. You're going to understand what's really going on with that child and what needs work. You can help decide what to do with the information. It can really help figuring out where to place that student, what level, what understanding they have, so you can really get a better understanding of how to help that child. So for the beginners and math and reading, for the math, it's just a series of problems from first grade through 8th. Students complete the math, and then the teacher will evaluate and kind of record how many they got wrong or how many they got right. You repeat this for the fall and the spring. For the fall, it's more of just the baseline of what they already know. And in the spring, you see how far they came from they were in the beginning, in the fall. For the reading, it's a series of short stories from primary to 8th grade. So the teacher goes in and they have their own booklet, and then they're going to read off instructions, and after the student finishes the story, the teacher will read off the multiple choice questions. So the student has the multiple choice questions in front of them, as well as the teacher reading them, just so they have a better understanding of what is being asked. So after that, you'll evaluate and record your information, and then you also repeat for the fall and spring, so you have that baseline. The results I had for the student I tested, they missed 3 out of 60 questions after finishing with a 97% accuracy. The student scored above the average accuracy of 80%. I believe the student should be tested at a higher level with a different test and then decide what level to be placed at from there. Their results can help the school decide what level to place the student at, where they need more work, where their understanding kind of lacks. So this can help find their weaknesses and strengths and help address the problem immediately. So I kind of concluded the testing. I find that having multiple different ways of being able to assess a student is really helpful. So if one assessment doesn't really work as well as the other, you have a couple others to fall back on and understand really what it is that the student needs help with, what they need to understand, and everything like that. Triangulation, I learned that that was one of the most accurate forms of assessment because you do have 3 different types of assessment going on in that one triangulation. So it really pinpoints what the problems are, what's needed to be done, what can help that student. And I think that would be the most accurate and smartest way to assess a student. After giving the Brigance reading test, I got a better understanding of how to give these tests and how the students react to these tests. I think that the student I worked with, he knew the information really well, and I think that what he needed was another a higher up test to kind of fill in the gap, because I think that if he would be placed in 8th grade setting, I think he would even be ahead of the game then. I learned to instruct a student, and when instructing a student, you need to be patient and kind of help them understand the problem as well as they can. I found that the more patient I am, the more understanding, the more I ask questions, they kind of respond better to that. Sometimes you need to just slow down and help them understand what you're talking about, and it can kind of help what their understanding. And then I just have a few sources. So yeah.